some of you on this call about the possibility for a virtual pathway. We are now launching it. I want to give my colleague, Rabbi Rachel Maimin, a chance to introduce herself. We're going to be walking you through our presentation today, and then we're going to leave lots of time for questions towards the end. Rabbi Maimin.
Hey all, Rabbi Rachel Maimin. So wonderful to see so many familiar faces and some new faces to me on this call today. I am coming to you today from our New York campus. I live in Brooklyn and work here on campus, which is in Lower Manhattan, right near NYU. And I'm also an alum of our rabbinical program. Also worked in the congregational world for about 10 years before rejoining my alma mater and coming back to HUC as part of the recruitment and admissions team about 2 years ago. It's just wonderful to be here and so excited about this new journey of the virtual pathway, and really thrilled to get to talk through it and answer questions today. Just to let you also know that we are going to record the first part of our time together so that we can share this learning with others, and then we'll take a pause on that so that we can ask some questions and answer some questions as well.
Submitting more people as we go. So without further ado, let's jump into what is the Rabbinical School Virtual Pathway. What does this mean? What does it look like? What's the application process like? Some of you, I believe, I'm quite certain, are in the middle of this process right now. So some of this information will be old news, and some of it will be hopefully not, but new. So we've already shared who we are, but in case it's worth writing down our email addresses or the ways to get to our Calendly, these are available. Just so you know, I'll drop them again at the end, but for those who might want to just jot this down really quickly, this is really the easiest way to get in touch with the two of us. It is not considered rude in this office to just go ahead and plop yourself into our calendars, even if we haven't yet had a conversation. It's really the best way to get ourselves time and have a real conversation. So here's our short agenda for today. We want to walk you through what is the virtual pathway, and its strange name. If anyone wants to hear the history of how we arrived on virtual pathway, happy to share. A little overview of how our admissions process works. And then a quick invitation to visit campus before we get to questions and answers. Now, you might say, why visit campus? This is a virtual program. Because it's lovely to be with other Jews. It's great to meet future colleagues. It's a great thing to pray on campus, to meet our faculty in person. As you'll soon see, much of the virtual pathway, even though the bulk is done online, there's a great deal of being in person and together by design. And that's why we'd want to invite you to campus. But let's start with just like a bissel of Torah, a little bit of Torah, because after all, that is why so many of us are called to consider this work. This comes from Avot de Rabbi Natan, hard to date piece of our canon, but it's pretty clear by the Middle Ages that other sources are referencing the stories found in Avot de Rabbi Natan. So I wanted to share very quickly the background of Rabbi Akiva. What were the origins of Rabbi Akiva? They say that he was 40 years old and had still not learned anything. Once he was standing at the mouth of a well and he said, "Who carved a hole in this stone?" And they said to him, "It is from the water, which constantly falls on it day after day." And they said, "Akiva, don't you know this from the verse in Job, water erodes stones?" Rabbi Akiva immediately applied this, all the more so to himself. He said, if something soft can carve something hard, then all the more so the words of Torah, which are like steel, can engrave themselves on my heart, which is but flesh and blood. He immediately went to start studying Torah. He went with his son, and they sat down by the school teachers. He said to one, "Rabbi, teach me Torah." He then took hold of one end of the tablet, and his son took hold of the other end. The teacher wrote down Aleph and Bet for him, and he learned them. Aleph to Tav, and he learned them. The book of Leviticus, and he learned it. And he went on studying until he learned the whole Torah. Then he went and sat before Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua. "My masters," he said, "open up the sense of the Mishnah to me." When they told him one law, he went off and sat down to work it out for himself. I hope it's obvious why sharing, and the story goes on, by the way, and Akiva becomes one of the most important rabbis in our entire collection of rabbis in our lineage. And when I say our, I mean those of us who are rabbis. Many of us feel called to being a part of the legacy that was Rabbi Akiva's, because he understood and really modeled for all of us that learning never stops, and that you can learn really difficult things, really challenging things, and still make a deep impact, even if you begin in his case at the age of 40. And some of you might be laughing because you might say, "Oh, I remember 40." And that's what this is about. This is about remembering that nothing is finished, and we're all in process, and we're all in formation. And I hope that offers some sort of grounding for the conversation we're going to have today. So why offer the virtual pathway? It's our chance to make our rabbinical school curriculum available and accessible to second career students who might otherwise be unable to attend our on-campus program. We also understand that for some folks, this might mean, well, I'm close to a campus, but my lifestyle really doesn't allow, or my job or my responsibilities really doesn't allow me to make the hour-long commute or the 90-minute commute to get from, I don't know, I was speaking with someone yesterday, from Long Island all the way to the East Village. Things which still sound theoretical to me as someone who's never lived in New York. The goal here is to really bring great students who might otherwise not be able to participate into this program, because we know that you are out there. We know that the Jewish community is eager to have your leadership in a professional capacity, not only in a lay capacity, and that's where this program comes from. What does it look like? It's our curriculum. It is our 5-year curriculum, realigned, modalities changed, opportunities created so that we can deliver the same rigorous curriculum in the right formats and in the right ways for students who are studying virtually. Now, what does that mean? It means we make some accommodations. One of them is that it's a 3-semester year, not a 2-semester year, which includes summers. And while the program is a 5-year program, we know that some of you will enter with graduate credits in the very same field that you're entering. And those credits will take time off of your studies here, or reduce your course load some semesters. We want to acknowledge that not only do you come with professional experience, but you're also coming with academic experience. We plan to offer these classes synchronously on Mondays and Thursdays, but we also know that with good virtual learning, there's a fair amount that's asynchronous or really just on your schedule. Just as for our campus-based students, Chavruta happens when you and your Chavruta are both available, and that will be certainly true for our virtual pathway. We plan to start every fall and every spring with an in-person intensive. And in fact, the inaugural cohort is already scheduled to be with us in January of 2025 in Cincinnati from, I believe it's January 12th to January 15th. A 4-day intensive to kick off each semester, to have more of that in-person time that will deepen your relationship with each other. There's a whole host of things that we think are possible there. And this will also include, at a minimum for most of you, a summer semester in Israel. It will be an intensive summer. It will be a 9-week semester, full of travel, full of coursework, full of lots of great learning, but also full of incredible experiences meeting Reform colleagues all over Israel, studying studying and praying in progressive and Reform synagogues all over the country, and trying to see where our comforts and our discomforts meet one another in the land of Israel. Most of you have thought about Hebrew Union College at different points in time, I think in large part because of our incredible fieldwork opportunities and the ways that we train our students while they're in school to be using what they learn in the classroom in synagogues, in organizations, Hillels, JCCs, federations. One of our student ambassadors right now is a rabbinic intern for Honeymoon Israel. There are a whole host of opportunities that become available through our network. And as I have told many of you, our job is really through those fieldwork opportunities to help you develop the kind of rabbinate that you see for yourself, and not necessarily the kind of rabbinate that someone told you you ought to pursue. That will be through fieldwork, that will be through internships, and certainly through the mentors that we put in front of you. I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Maimin, and she'll walk us through a little bit of how our admissions process works through this oh so simple 18-step map.
Is this the only slide, Rabbi Allenberg, that is about the admissions process?
There are a few others, but this way you can sort of walk
Okay,
us
terrific,
through.
terrific. Okay, great. As you can see, our strongly recommended step one of this process is to meet with an admissions counselor. That would be one of us and or one of our other colleagues on our team. We have met with many of you on this call. We certainly there will be some who are viewing this either today or present today or viewing this at another time who have not had a chance to meet with us first. And the reason is, as those of you in the midst of the application process know, this is a different kind of application process from other application processes from other schools that you may have applied to and or attended in the past. And so the process itself looks a little bit different. So for some of us, we might use the term calling, and by its nature, a calling will have a different kind of conversation. So we want to be able to have that conversation about your discernment process, about why you want to be a rabbi, about what animates you, what keeps you up at night, what gets you up in the morning, what your hopes and dreams are, what your questions and concerns are. We are really here from the moment of first dreaming through discernment and all the way through clicking submit on the application and beyond. So you can see that through through this overview. Opening the application is a 2-minute process. You only have to enter some very simple demographic information, and then you gain access to the entirety of the application. During the time that you are looking at and considering the questions that are involved in our application, which does include 4 essay questions. So we always recommend really giving yourself enough time to be able to work on those and to find yourself good editors and readers on that application. We also will connect you with Lisa Ansel, our Hebrew coordinator, so that you can make sure that that your Hebrew is either where it needs to be, and or to know, what do I need to do to get from where I am with my Hebrew learning to where I'd like to be in order to both complete the Hebrew capacity evaluation, which is a much later step after you see it as the second to last step, and also to be prepared to begin your studies and really dive into text. You'll see that actually many steps before submit your written application is ask for your letters of recommendation and order your transcripts. These are things over which you are in control when you ask for them. You are obviously not in control of when your recommenders take the time to complete the recommendation. It's a step within the application that you can do before submitting the entire application. So we strongly, strongly recommend that you first touch base with your recommenders. We're happy to talk to you about who those might be if you have some questions or concerns. Especially, we know that for folks who've been out of school a long time, sometimes that academic recommender can prove a real question mark, and we're happy to talk through ideas about who that might be, to talk to them, and then to send the reference recommendation form in so that they can get started on writing those recommendations. As part of the virtual pathway, there's also, oh, pardon me, order your transcripts. These need to be official transcripts sent directly from any and all higher learning institutions that you attended, sent directly to us, either by snail mail or by email. If you have questions on that, you can always ask us or our colleague, Michelle Waldron, who is here to support you in everything logistical every step of the way. You'll also receive from us an Israel education and experience inventory. That is so that we can really begin to assess your own experience with Israel and both your time spent in Israel as well as your learning about Israel. And to begin to develop an understanding of what your time in Israel during the program might look like. This is called a pathway by design. Everyone's journey is going to look a little bit different. And that is true both, as Rabbi Allenberg noted, in terms of coursework. It's also true in terms of time spent in Israel. There will be that summer that most of our students spend together in Israel. For some, that will be the sum total of time spent in Israel, of required time spent in Israel before ordination. And for others who spent less time in Israel, we will ask some of our students to spend another amount of time before ordination. That's a conversation that we will have with you. Then it's how are we doing, Rabbi Allenberg? I think we're going a little too in depth, perhaps, on here. I don't know what slides are next.
I think we're great. I'm gonna advance this to the next slide, but I do want to say on that front, some of you might be familiar with the term individualized education plan or an IEP. This has become increasingly common and even standard in a lot of public school systems in the United States, and I see them in private schools as well. This has really been our approach for a while, and the virtual pathway has also given us a reason to make this kind of standard for all entering students. I mentioned that you'd have a chance to look at to bring graduate school credit with you, assuming that it's in a similar or related field. So too with our Israel education and experience inventory, as we're calling it. It's a chance to customize your education and your obligations according to your own experience and education. I want to be extremely clear about this because these are the days when many of us feel tested by such things. This is in no way a litmus test about your loyalties to Israel or seeking a particular, I don't know, allegiance to a definition of Zionism or something like that. It really is exactly as it sounds, a chance for us to just understand how much time have you spent there and what kind of study have you done around it so that we can think about what else you might need. These are some of the deadlines for this year, but I just want to name, whenever you visit our website and you go to how to apply, if you select the program, these things will be updated throughout, whenever a new cycle opens, these things will be updated. These are our dates for the coming year. As you can see, if anyone's applying for the inaugural cohort, you have 2 days to finish that, but I think everyone on here that might be applying for that knows. And then I also want to name that our second deadline, or our second set of deadlines, are really for the fall enrollment. And we have more dates for interviews than those that are listed, but these are sort of the primary blocks of dates that we'll be interviewing candidates. We have been experiencing an embarrassment of riches, which is to say more candidates than we previously scheduled interview slots. So these are for sure, and we are also expanding our interview slots to make sure we can accommodate everyone who's a real applicant for this year. This was already shared, but just a few things to name. This is sort of how the written application breaks down. There are a few smaller questions, but I would say these are kind of the biggest pieces that stand out for us. We are looking for a professional resume that reflects your Experience and training that is relevant to this work. Although many of you are decorated and have published all over the place, we don't need every publication and every place you've given a public lecture. Although we would be very proud of you, it's not necessary for this stage of the application process. Really, it's about relevant information to this particular field and to this program. We're not going to give away here our short essay prompts because those change every year or two, but they are shorter essays, and that's where at least one of them always gives you a chance to teach a little bit of Torah. The last thing that I want to just point out here is we have introduced an academic narrative so that you can describe in your own words what it's like to be a student, what it's like to how you're thinking about returning to school if there's been a significant gap, which I suspect for most of our applicants to this program, it will be. What you've learned about yourself and the kind of accommodations or study techniques that you use. People really use this as an opportunity to explore what it means to be a student for them, and ways that they feed the passions of their learning. There isn't a correct answer. This is really about describing how you understand yourself. But we have found it's a really helpful narrative to accompany your transcripts. I suppose it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. If your transcripts reflect, let's just say, poorer performance than you are now in adulthood proud of, the academic narrative is a place to talk about why you failed that economics course or whatever might be on there. This was shared, and I just want to name again what Rabbi Maimin shared, that the academic reference is one that we have become increasingly flexible on the who, but not flexible on the what it is they're giving you a reference on. Namely, what's it like to encounter new ideas with you? How do you participate in a class? What's it like to receive academic feedback and then produce a second product or a third product? We can talk through each of those with each of you individually. We wanted to front load this particular piece. This is after you've submitted your application. Our process includes a psychological evaluation, and I really think the way that I like to describe this most is this is a double check for you and for us. It's a chance to make sure that the committee does not feel overconfident in evaluating your candidacy and reading into things. Most of us here think of ourselves as armchair psychologists. We don't trust the committee to fulfill that role, so we actually rely on a true psychologist. And even the psychologist uses a psychometric inventory. And right now we're using the MMPI-3 as a check against their own biases and assumptions. What are we really looking for? We're looking for mental health that reflects, as all of us do, that your challenges are being addressed or have been addressed, that if you're working through something, you're working through it or have worked through it with a therapist, and that you don't represent any particular red flags that would make the program in particular challenging or the career challenging. In most cases, the information shared in the psychological evaluation is only seen by a member of our team and the program director. This is not something that we are distributing to our interview committees to read, cover to cover. This is really meant to be a check against our own biases and assumptions, but not something that we feel enhances or speaks to your candidacy. And then this was mentioned before, but I'll allow people a chance to also, if you wish, to take sort of a screen grab of this. The same information is also available on our website, and I'd be happy to drop the link to that in the chat. But this gives you a sense of what we're looking for. I recognize that not everyone learns, in fact, none of us learn Hebrew by saying, I found a tutor, dear tutor, please teach me verbs, right? But that you'll work in a whole language context. These are things that we want to make sure you understand we're trying to measure from your progress in language acquisition. Currently, our standard for matriculating to the year in Israel is a minimum of Bet level Ulpan, and the plan is to continue that forward into the virtual pathway for fall enrollment. That being said, and some of you have heard this from us an awful lot, arriving as a bet level student will mean that you are at the bottom of the Hebrew sort of stack, and you'll be working hard to keep up with your coursework. We will still continue teaching Hebrew, but we always encourage you to enter with as much modern Hebrew as you can, because from there you can only go forward, and your fluency and your fluidity with text will only increase. Rabbi Maimin, would you walk us through the interview, pretty please?
Absolutely. After you have completed the psychological evaluation, we will invite you to join us for an interview. You'll have an opportunity, which is really an opportunity for a conversation. It's a conversation with you and 4 to 6 of your closest friends, i.e. us, some combination of Rabbi Allenberg and me, as well as a combination of faculty and administrators from our rabbinical program. So this is a chance for us to explore with you and you to explore with us. Why do you want to become a rabbi? Why HUC? Why at this moment in your life? That will always be the first question that we ask you, as well as a number of other areas. And I'm not going to read through every single one of them on this screen, but a number of other areas that you might imagine that a group of folks who are deeply, deeply committed to rabbinic education, to the current climate and current big questions impacting the rabbinate and Judaism in North America and beyond, want to have a conversation with someone about who is also interested in these kinds of questions. The interview itself is about 45 to 60 minutes. It's all online. And we also give you the opportunity to ask your own questions of us. The one other piece that I'll just add is that everyone who's participating in the committees is so deeply committed to this. We will have all read your entire application before you come in to the interview. So it's really yet another opportunity for us to get to know you and for you to get to know us.
So I mentioned this at the beginning, and then we'll move to questions, but we'd love to welcome you to campus. We do have a New York open house coming up shortly. Everyone always says, why don't you have an LA open house? And it's a great question. The reality is the New York campus is incredibly accessible by train and other forms of transportation from many Jewish, communities within hours. And LA does not have that particular luxury. So what we've found is it's fairly easy for people to get to campus for a day in New York, but in LA, people tend to come for more than a day, 2 days at a minimum. In order to help make this possible, we're willing to reimburse people for up to $250 of their travel expenses. We just ask that you actually arrange a visit with us and don't just show up on campus. Because what we want to do is schedule time with students who might be in a similar place or come from have a similar background. If there's a particular professor or the program directors on campus that day, we'd love to make sure that you got time with them. And that's really hard to do without advanced planning. Again, this is us.
Can I add one more element to that visit piece, which is that we do have an open house coming up on our New York campus, December 4th and 5th. Well, if you haven't been getting information about it, you will now be getting information about it in your inbox. You're welcome to schedule time outside of that as well. And if you'd like to come at a time when other prospective students are visiting, we welcome you then. And the only last piece I'll add is that we know that visiting campus will give you a flavor of HUC, and that the coursework of the virtual pathway will by nature, by design, look a little bit different. And so as we launch the program in January, we will then be providing opportunities for prospective students on particular days to come sit in on a given class. And we will have opportunities to join together in learning even before applying to the program for those applicants for any given cycle, we will have a pre-course as well that will all be online. So lots of opportunities to engage and to explore.